And feedback's a tricky one, isn't it? What advice do you give to your screenwriters when they're receiving advice? How to take advice, how to receive it? Because sometimes you can get advice very different on a script. So what advice would you give to writers in terms of how to handle feedback?
So I think the key, the main thing is when you get feedback and something really touches you and you go, oh, that's something I know I've been kind of avoiding, or oh, that's, there's a truth, it touches a nerve because it's true. When it touches a nerve because it's true, look at it. If it's just like, okay, that's an opinion, then you have to kind of go, okay, maybe I'll get that. If you get that opinion many, many times, then you may go, okay, if I want this to go in this other direction where more people are going to see it, it depends on who you're writing it for. It depends on what your aspirations are in terms of your career. But when it comes to the notes themselves, I think it's a matter of, do you actually wholeheartedly agree? If you wholeheartedly agree, then you got to face it. Mm-hmm. If you're in doubt, you get more opinions. You kind of go, oh, there's something to that, but I don't know. Have a couple more people, and I don't mean tons of people, I mean one or two people. Mm-hmm. Again, it's about like step by step, and then it never hurts to try something either. It never hurts to kind of go, okay, I don't agree with this, but I am going to see what would happen if I do explore that possibility. And certainly as a paid writer and a work, if you're writing with different companies, you got to have that skill anyway. So you may as well get used to it, build those muscles and try things. And then at least you have an argument. Then you can go, what, I tried that and it didn't work. And I'll tell you why it didn't work. It didn't work because it created this other problem. Yeah. Or you may be surprised and find, what, I thought that was the worst note in the world, and wow, did it make a difference. Yeah. But I think the writers that I know who are having the most success are the ones who are always willing to try. They're the ones who they don't say an immediate no, or they don't put a wall up. They kind of just absorb it, sleep on it, think about it. So what are the possibilities of that? What does that note really mean? Mm-hmm. What was that feedback about? And sometimes you think it's this huge note, and it's actually like the smallest little note. But if you don't give it the time to think about it, you don't really know. So it is a delicate thing. And I think that is one thing where script editors can help writers too, is when sometimes talking them off the ledge. But sometimes just like putting it in perspective and going, well, that's absolutely fine that they had that opinion. You sent a drama to a comedy company, what are you expecting? And like within, sometimes it's a very obvious kind of disconnect. And sometimes it's more subtle, but the beauty and the frustration is that we're all entitled to our own opinions. So you're going to have people who love your work, you're going to have people who hate your work, you're going to have everything in between. Yeah. And that from all the film reviews you've ever read. Like your favorite movies, there have been bad reviews about those, right? It's just how it is. So it's kind of like seeing where it touches you.
I love what you're saying about like just being open to try it, because sometimes you probably won't, a writer could be quite strong, have a strong opinion about their character, but actually giving it giving it a go might open a whole other set of new possibilities. It might not work, but if it could actually enhance the project for the better. And I guess it comes down to knowing the characters.
And it comes down to being able to hold your ground too, because if you haven't tried it, then it's kind of hard to say, well, no, I just don't like that idea. Whereas if you've tried it, you could say, you know what, gives specific reasons why it doesn't work. And producers and whoever, whether it's producer or director, you can have that conversation then.
Totally.
And then you can come up with something that works even better one way or the other. But when you kind of just say no, it's a dead end for everybody. And it's a dead end for the writer.
I suppose it's also, if they're suggesting something else, or they're wanting something to change, if you can come up with alternatives as well. If you don't like the note they're giving you, perhaps as well, if you give alternatives to them.
Yeah, and I mean, this is all with the understanding that you're trying to tell the same story.
Yeah.
You know, I think one of the things that does happen is people, you know, and this happens even with professionals who've been working for years. I've seen it happen, and you're surprised when it does happen, but it happens where you'll have a producer and a writer who are both great people, great, very talented, smart people, but they're actually telling different stories. And I think that's one of the key things, is making sure that you are both telling the same story, or trying to tell the same story, because otherwise that could be endless. That you know, you're never going to connect if you think your end goal isn't the same.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's one thing that that does get lost sometimes. It gets lost when something gets optioned, and somebody will option something before they've even had a talk with the writer, and they have talked about, you know, what changes might be made, and then they're both in the situation where, oh, you optioned this, but you want me to change this. And maybe that, you know, so there is about communication and making sure that everybody is heading in the same direction.
What advice would you give to a writer in that scenario? Have you ever, you know, can you think of an example there?
I think it's about trying to have a conversation and saying, you know, what, obviously, if you're a brand new writer, you've never had anything optioned, and somebody wants to option your work, being as flexible as you can be to get that first credit is useful. But on the other hand, you know, I mean, I've seen it be where somebody's doing a historical drama, and a producer wanted it to be a comedy, and it just was like never going to work. Having that conversation earlier and saying, well, what kind of movie, what do you know, you know, hopefully the producers will have, you know, will lead this conversation. It's harder for the writer to, but if there's not a communication coming from the producers, then I would say the writer has every right to say, I just want to make sure that we're on the same page. And what kind of film are you thinking we're making? Can we talk about the end? You know, who are you thinking? What kind of talent might it be? Like having those kind of conversations about expectation and tone, you know, really important.
That's really, really valuable. Wow, I thought of that.